Hold on. All right, welcome back to another episode of Fellow Drops Brew Guide videos. Today's coffee is EPA, or Ecuador Pichincha Alambi from Driftaway, not to be confused with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. But what's really cool about this bag is that it is fully compostable. So if you did care about the environment, you can compost this bag. Pretty awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what makes this coffee special. So this is actually a blend of coffees that comes from 6 different producers, and they're all Ecuadorian producers, and specific varietals are here. I'm gonna have the video editor add that in because those are hard words to pronounce. So because this coffee is actually a blend of a bunch of different varietals, what we end up in cup is we get a bunch of different flavors. And to us, we've tasted watermelon Jolly Rancher, coconut water with like a lime citrus finish, and it makes for a very unique cup. And what's cool about this is because they're all wash coffees, the finish on this is always very clean. And what I'm going to show you all today is a pour-over recipe as well as espresso. I highly suggest with these drops and all of these drops, you experiment and you have fun. And coffees like this allow you to do that because you can accentuate different flavors with different brewing methods. And that's what makes this coffee stuff so fun. Without further ado, let's go ahead and go into the pour-over guide. So crack this guy open. Cleanish opening there. So it's just lovely, lovely aromatics when you smell the coffee. So for this, I'm actually doing a pretty standard pour recipe. I have an ode here with the stock burrs, the stock 1.1 burrs. And what I'm going to do is I am going to be doing 22 grams in, 350 grams out. Of course, experiment with all of this, but I'll go ahead and actually do the recipe with you guys. And if you have any questions on this specific recipe, just let us know in the comments and we'll answer back. But here we go. Okay. Now this is a really nice, this roast is also very even across the board, but yeah, wow, that smells really good. By the way, if you've ever had static issues with your ode or you've wanted things to be a little bit cleaner, take a little bit of water, spray your beans, and grind away. This is called RDT. It will make your life much cleaner and reduce the static when you grind your coffee. And I just ground this coffee at 2, so yeah, there we go, RDT, no static, very, very cool. But I found out with this coffee, I actually like, this is a relatively light roast. I would definitely say lighter end of medium here. And these types of coffees always benefit from a slightly finer grind. You can always push so much out of them without fear of over extraction. So we're grinding at around a 2 to 1. If you're on Stock Ode, anything from that 2 to 1 is going to be pretty good. And if you have SSP multi-purpose burrs in your ode, if you're about 4 to 5 clicks off chirp, you can probably be in that 5 to 6 range. Do not feel afraid to push finer grinds with these coffees. Okay, just giving this a pre-wet. All right, so the recipe that I'm going to go with is just, again, 22 grams in, 350 out. What I'm going to do is I am going to pour up to 50 grams for the bloom, give it a slight agitation, then pour up to 150, 250, 350. Very straightforward. If you want more body in this coffee, just reduce that ratio a little bit or up dose. You can up dose your initial dose to something like 23, 24, 25, but I found out this recipe works pretty nice for this coffee. So I'm doing my bloom, Going to pour up to 50 grams. We're going to pour relatively slow, make sure all of those grounds are nicely saturated. I like to give it a slight agitation. I let this bloom around 30 to 45 seconds. All right, and now I'm going to pour 100 grams up to 150 grams slowly. And we're going to repeat this 2 more times till we end up with 350. I'm just pouring inside and out. And if you want to see a more comprehensive pour-over brew guide where we show you everything, please check out the video in the description. It's our Manhattan brew guide. So now we're at 150. Now I'm just going to pour up to 250. Going in even concentric circles. But if you're using a dripper like the Stag X, you can feel pretty comfortable with not being the most perfect, as this is a fairly forgiving dripper. Okay, 350, our final pour. And at the end of this, once we hit 350, we are then going to give it a slight agitation. And my total brew time on this coffee has been around that 3-minute mark. But I always like to try to extend the ratios out with some of these coffees if you're just learning them. I think it makes it very helpful for learning what the coffee tastes like. All right, give that a nice little agitation, and we'll let that drain through. Okay, so our total brew time was basically 3 minutes, 3:30. You definitely can push finer grind settings with this coffee, but wow, aromatics on this are really nice. I'm definitely getting a lot of this like watermelons off the smell. And because I'm the only person here, I'm just going to drink out of the Mighty Smell carafe. So, you know, don't know if that's against the rules or anything. Wow. Really lovely aromatics on this. It's super sweet smelling, which is very nice. Definitely, like, I would say a milk chocolate smell. So you definitely see like notes on here of milk chocolate, and that is actually going to come out a lot in espresso. It's pretty good. We definitely get this watermelon Jolly Rancher note up front, and the finish then is very sweet. It goes into the kind of this coconut water, and I think as this coffee cools down, more of this acidity is going to come out. But so far, this is just, when you're sipping it, this is a very comforting, like this is a light roast, but it's very comforting to sip. It's not punching you in the face with massive acidity or anything like that. I think this is just going to produce a very enjoyable cup for a lot of you guys, because I think this is actually a really great coffee as espresso. So let's magically make an espresso machine appear. Boom, an espresso machine has magically appeared. Let's talk espresso now. What I'm going to show you today is just a recipe that we've kind of been using for a lot of these coffees. These lighter roast coffees that you may traditionally use for filter can actually be adapted fairly well for espresso. So that's why we're going to be doing a 1 to 3 in 20 to 25 seconds faster flowing style shot, turbo long ratio shot, so you actually get clarity with these coffees. But what's nice about this coffee is that you do get nice notes up front, but the finish is always pretty sweet with it. So we get this kind of watermelon Jolly Rancher situation, and that can also be interpreted as, I would say, like citrus, lime, and then it finishes nice and sweet. But with all of these recipes, what I'd recommend is start out, try it out. This is a baseline recipe. Have a fun time. See if you like that or not, and what you can do is just tighten up the grind, and if you tighten up the grind, you can pull a more traditional style of shot, and with this coffee, it is definitely, I would say, like a more sweetish milk chocolate finish that you can get, rather than, I would say, a fruitier finish. All right. But I do think this is a fantastic coffee in espresso, and it does really work well as a base for your milk drinks. Okay, here we go. Starting 6 bars, and I'm at a pretty fast flow. And we're going to ramp down when we hit about 50-ish grams. All right, so that is 54 grams in 25 seconds. Definitely more of a turbo, faster flowing style of shot. What we want to be able to achieve here is actually taste the flavor notes of the coffee. And this is a profile that is incredibly forgiving for actually doing that. Feel free to adapt this recipe for a variety of coffees, or for this coffee. You can definitely push finer grounds with this. Wow, I've really been sipping on this, but what I get in this coffee is definitely more citrus now in espresso. So I would say definitely on the notes on the bag here, I'm definitely getting this raspberry and milk chocolate situation going on. So in PourOver, by the way, in PourOver, that's interesting. So in that PourOver, now that that's cooled down, that's definitely more of that like Jolly Rancher, watermelon Jolly Rancher, coconut water, really subtle, just nice, nice smooth finishes. Whereas this in espresso, I'm definitely getting more of these like raspberry notes, and the finish on this is very, very milk chocolate-like. And I think that's just because of the brewing method that we're using here. But that's what I want to show off, is a coffee like this can be adapted with a variety of brewing methods, and you can just bring out so many different notes with the same exact coffee. And it also helps that there are a variety of varietals in this coffee. So that's really cool. I mean, this is really fun to brew with. Like to get a coffee that is very flexible and adaptable and fun to brew with is what I like. Yeah, that is so interesting. That's like that coconut water Jolly Rancher, watermelon Jolly Rancher situation. And then in this, definitely getting more, I would say, like a citrus and almost, I want to say, sparkling acidity in this. But the finish and overall profile of this is definitely in that milk chocolate world. So it finishes nice and sweet, whereas in the filter brew, it finishes much more, I would say, like coconut water, more subtle finish. It tastes pretty different depending on what brewing method you use. I think that's what makes all this coffee stuff super fun. But otherwise, that is this week's coffee. Driftaway's EPA, Ecuador, Pichincha, Alambi. Really nice coffee, pretty adaptable across the board. And I think you all will have a lot of fun with this coffee. And that's all for today. If you have any questions regarding brewing, fellow drops, fellow products, or anything, let us know in the comments below. But otherwise, thank you so much for spending the time to watch today's video. We'll see you next week.